Hi, this is the Social Gelo with Angelo show. My name's Angelo. I'm a social scientist, surfer, martial artist, and a whole lot of other things. Coming to you live from Kasai City, Japan, the Social Gelo with Angelo show.
What's up, and welcome to Social Gelo with Angelo podcast. Today, this is part of my Kajukenbo Methods series. Now, I always say this, I am not the Kajukenbo podcast. There's actually a KSDI podcast that's out there. Check it out. I usually put a link for it over here or so you can click on there and check it out. That's ran by Mitch Powell and Glenn Fraticelli. Check that out if you want. But this is the Social Gelo with Angelo podcast, a podcast about social psychology and martial arts, mostly a lot of martial arts. Today, I'm here with my guest, Sifu, founder, if I'm not mistaken, of the One Hop Kuen Do. Did I say that right?
Just think about somebody on one foot and taking one hop. This is one hop can do, one hop can do.
Okay. So, as part of the Kajukenbo Method series, you can check it out. Every single type of method, I've been interviewing people from that style to talk about how it came about and how it got brought into Kajukenbo. So I figured I got very lucky today and ended up with the man and the legend himself here, Sifu, who's going to break down how that happened. So, Sifu, how did let's start with there's a lot. There's a lot.
Any way you want.
You sent me over your book, which was what was the title of it again? I remember it was Legacy.
Legacy Through the Eyes of a Warrior.
There it is. And it's on Amazon, so please check that out. So there's a lot of information here. So I'm going to try to if I had to break it all down, it would take me 24 hours. We'd be here all week, Sifu.
Fine with me. got no place else to go.
so I'm going to try to refine it down to the topic I mentioned in the beginning. How did you? And let's just start with simple. How did you end up getting into Kajukenbo? We'll just start right there. How did you end up getting into Kajukenbo?
Well, I was actually in judo first, judo jiu-jitsu. And actually what was happening was young boy, you and your between 9 and 10, 11, 12, all that, started judo jiu-jitsu early. But my influence, if I go back, I started off first. I live on an island called Kauai, and I live in a place called, at that time, Camp 7. And Camp 7 was what do you call, where all the plantation workers work. The Japanese had Camp 6, we had Camp 7, the Chinese had Camp 8, and Camp 9 was run by the Portuguese. Things this way, my grandpa was a cane worker in the fields. During that time, they had a lot of Filipinos that came over from Asia, to work on the plantations, and I was just one of there living with my grandpa at that time, young boy, and maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, just watching my grandpa practice eskrima, Filipino fighting arts, in the morning, 6 o'clock, before they went on the wagon and out into the fields. But so Filipino martial arts was just my first art, and not learning anything, just watching what they're doing and mimicking what they were doing, just to have fun. And then I got into judo jiu-jitsu when we moved from Kauai up onto the mainland, not the mainland, the main island of Oahu. There I learned judo jiu-jitsu, and then from judo jiu-jitsu, I went into Tiken Jitsukai, which is an offshoot of was that Kyokushinkai, and that was interesting because by that time I was already in high school, going in that path, and having judo, I thought I was pretty good until I met this guy, Richard Whaley, and I couldn't grab him and throw him down. He was just kicking and punching and everything. We were just sparring, and I figured, well, it's time for me to get into this Tiken Jutsukai. And Peter Sunshine eventually came my teacher. We were calling him just chief instructor. No such thing as Sifu or Qigong or whatever that. And I was practicing with Richard Whaley in the backyard of my house, and he and his girlfriend came up to my mom's house on account that he was wanting to have a dress tailored because my mom was a dressmaker. So he came with her, you know, and his girlfriend, I can't forget forget her name. Lola was the name. Eventually ended up being his wife. They were up in the front and we were in the back, and Richard Whaley and I was, doing some things, and he kind of heard us doing this TI and all that kind of stuff. So he came back and watched us, and as he was watching us, we thought it was pretty good, And then he said, "That's not going to work." So when he told us that wasn't going to work, we turned around and asked him why not. He says that's the movements. It's too static, So he came and he showed us what he was doing, and that was on Thursday, and came Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. He came and picked me up and took me to his class, and so we went into a place in Waipaho. It wasn't called Kajukenbo at that time; it was just called Kempo Karate. Yep. Um, so I watched his class, and I saw this guy El Dela Cruz. Boy, he was awesome, and some of the other guys there. So I figured, well, it's time for me to switch from Tiken Justikai to Kempo Karate, and I stayed with him and I trained with him, and uh, different type of culture in a sense, because these guys, when I was with them, every time after we finished class, we went to a place called Wailani Simon Stand, and that was in a city called Waipaho, and these guys were always afterwards drinking and smoking a lot. So I didn't kind of and I wasn't that way, because I was still a teenager then. But so they're just drinking and smoking all the time, and every now and then they would end up in the parking lot getting into fights, which I thought was a culture of that time. This was a culture of that time. So that's the way that I went, and I stayed there, and then what the switch from Kempo Karate to Kajukenbo, I can't recall when. I think it was in 61 or 62 when we had this guy Joe Black, Joe Black. We had Emperado, Twinkle Kawakami, and Henry Mendak, uh, and she's a guy I forget. There was a 4 or 5 other guys that came. Um, and visit us at the club. We were dressed in at that time, all in white karate uniform with red T-shirt on the inside. Yeah. Um, so they came inside and they watched us and we demonstrated and everything. And then Twinkle Kawakama came up and said, "Okay, because you guys are your instructor, your instructor, Cedar Sunshine's first instructor was Joe Emperado. And so what you guys going to do now is just that we incorporated, and you guys are all Kajukenbo now, and I didn't know what the hell Kajukenbo was, but what we were doing in Kempo Karate was actually Kajukenbo. The movement's all the same. It's just that they never called it at that particular time. So we were no different from them, So we put the uniform on, and all of a sudden, my uniform, and I still use it today, uh, I dyed my uniform to black, and the uniform, as you see in my book on the front cover, still original one. It ended up losing the blackness and ended up being like almost like a gunmetal gray, So all the Kajukenbo people, if you can tell that especially the Kempo people couldn't keep their uniform straight black. A lot of them come up with a gunmetal gray or dark black. With you can tell the white was beginning to come inside, and people recognize us when we're into tournament. Oh, I say the Kajukenbo people, because of the uniform. Only in the later years, 20, 30 years later, where you could get it from some place where the uniform was actually black and stayed black. But I didn't want mine. I didn't want mine black. I was okay with using the gray uniform. something I still use today, man. Over 60 years old or something, you know. So we went to that color, and then started using, you know, red T-shirt on the inside, and the gunmetal gray or dark black or dark gray, which was actually black, to consider to be a Kajukenbo. And there, from that time on, as I progressed up, you know, I guess in the 1960s, uh, I ended up being assistant instructor under um, El Dela Cruz and Dela Cruz under Cedar Sunshine. And El Dela Cruz and I, you know, we're the same age, you know. He's only 9 months older than me. And he decided that now that he was an instructor, you know, after being there for about a year or 2 years as an assistant instructor, he decided that he wanted to go to the originator of Kajukenbo, which was Emperado. And so he asked Cedar Sunshine to go to, that he wanted to go study with Emperado. And of course, conflict started happening. We have a conflict between Cedar Sunshine and Emperado because uh, well, you know, if you got your top instructor, you know, leaving and going, you know, that's going to cause dissension. So he left, and then I was in charge. I became the assistant instructor. Took over Sid's place, and I was there for about a year. And I kind of got lonely because I thought that Emperor was teaching uh, uh, with El Dela Cruz all kind of stuff, and I was losing out over there. So I made a decision to leave also, and that didn't go good. So you had the two top instructors ended up going with Emperado, and so he let us go. But you know, I know he was upset. But for me, I was after knowledge, you know, which for me ended up being not so good, you know. So here we have Dela Cruz and me going with Emperado, and we were running um, Emperado's class at Palamo Settlement, you know, regional place, you know. And that's the first time I met Dichi Emperado. And when I first met Dichi Emperado, you know, she was a purple belt or a blue belt and came and visit us. You see what I mean? And here we are, you know, Dela Cruz and me were the top black belts under Cedar Sunshine running that class for Emperado. And after being with Emperado for, oh, geez, in about 6 months, I kept telling him, I says, what'd you learn? You know, he says, oh, nothing much. It's the same old thing. I says, yeah, you know what? I think I made a mistake now because Sid is really pissed off with me, but because there was nothing much to learn, it was the same thing. You see, so we figured, you know what, we're gonna just sit down with Emperor and just learn as much as we can. But most of the thing we learned from Emperor or more from up here. You know, he spoke to us more, and then we met, you know, Ming Lam and all that in there, and you know, we sat in that circle now, different type of circle, you know. And I was telling Ming Lam, I said, you know, we went to the Emperor when he talked so much, you know, we want to learn. And you know, and there's kids, you know, young teenagers at that time, you know, you don't care too much talking. All you want to do is just go in and kick ass, you know, and just learn the kind of stuff, right? So this is when Ming Lam said, you know, you can learn more from a person in 5 minutes talking than you can learn physical from a person teaching you 5 hours. It never made sense to me, you know, at that time, because I wasn't into that thing, you know what I mean? But when you kind of take a look at it, everything that what Emperor was talking to us about the philosophy, you know, some of the techniques and everything, and explained it more, and now everything began to make sense. It was like, you know, you had to have somebody else tell you the same thing what your instructor was telling you. Then you know, oh, that's what he was talking about. That is what he's talking about. You know, so it took a while before uh, Dela Cruz and I humble ourselves. You know, afterwards. And the way that I did it was just that I was really kind of ashamed already because I had already moved to the mainland and had achieved coming up within a status within Kajukenbo there. And as a fighter in 1969, 1970, 71, around that time, I was the number one in the Rocky Mountain area, and then in the top 10 fighters in America in Kajukenbo, you know. So we had like guys like Bill Wallace and Chuck Norris and a lot of guys. And I was the only one that was representing Kajukenbo at that time. So my popularity within Kajukenbo came. Now I was on a lot of magazines, and this is where it was getting complicated because my last name was kind of confusing because the original way is spelling it Dacoscos, Filipino style Dacascos, but the magazines couldn't pronounce Dacascos. They pronounced it Dacascos, Damascus, and all kinds of stuff. So it was 3 times in a row that Black Belt and Official Karate Magazine called me El Dacascos. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to leave it as El Dacascos. You see what I mean? I wasn't going to change the name at all. So we left it at El Dacascos. And then Rainbow Publication says, hey, this was already now, it took a long time now, 1992. So it was almost like 20 years. I was with Emperado, but, I was coming up and all these kind of things. And coming back, I said, it wasn't Emperado that really made me. It was Cedar Sunshine that made me, and Cedar Sunshine that made us Al Dela Cruz. So it was kind of guilty, because a lot of people, oh man, Emperado showed you this and everything, right? And I knew it wasn't Emperado that showed me the things. He made me realize more what it was. But the person that actually molded me was Cedar Sunshine. So when I made the 3 videotapes for Rainbow Publications, and they did that Kajukenbo series. I did Kajukenbo, One Hop Kendo 1, and then 2, 3, and 4 was all dedicated to what One Hop Kendo was all about. And I dedicated that to Cedar Sunshine, and then actually came back and had collected a lot of magazine covers that I was on as much as I can. By that time, I was on over maybe 75 covers of martial arts magazines. By the time that I retired, I ended up with over 200 covers all over the world. But during that time, I had all the cover magazines, and then I had this videotapes that I had, and then I gave it. I came back from Hawaii and I went to Cedar Sunshine's place, and he was surprised. So I told him, hey, I hope we can talk. So we talked, and he was really happy. I just dedicated them the 4 videotapes that I had, and I said, your name's on it, and I tell people where it came from and everything. And from that point on, whenever I was on magazines, I always said, although Emperado was my teacher in the Kajukenbo was afterwards, I said my dedication is actually to Cedar Sunshine. He was the one that made me El Dela Cruz and the such. So that was it. And then I had to give him a second copy of it, because during that time, when I gave him the copy, and the things, about 6 months later, they were doing also what they call Jurassic Park on the island of Kauai. And they had a big hurricane come in, and it was called Hurricane Iniki, Hurricane Iniki, that came inside and devastated that island. And his house was devastated. So all the magazines, all the videotapes was gone. So he asked me to give him another copy. So I did, and everything again. So, I was happy to do that. And that point on, all my learning that I had that came into to Kajukenbo One Hop Kendo took a real big switch, because I realized that, how you have it is you have, Kajukenbo is your system, and then your style of Kajukenbo was, either going to be Kajukenbo Kempo Karate, Kajukenpo Chonfa, Kajukenpo Tonpai, or Kajukenbo One Hop Kendo. That became your style, you see. But what shifted us into that movement was just that when I was up in California, and we had what you call the KAA, the Kajukenbo Association of America. This is where we had Charles Gelo, Tony Ramos, Hal Bruno, El Reyes, and myself. We were like the 5 local people that came from the islands and up to the mainland, and it was our schools that was actually getting into karate tournaments. And in karate tournaments, they had different type of rules, and that's the reason why we formed the KAA, was that to checkmate the karate and taekwondo organizations over there. That when we competed, we had to compete with their rules, So we figured that as we come inside with an association with all of our Kajukenbo schools, then we would have our play, because now we could have our instructors, get and participate into their judging and influence them. That we like to use the back fist, we like to use a drop kick to the groin, we like to use certain things that they weren't so used to. And I remember one time I was fighting in this guy called Steve Armstrong tournament. He had it in Seattle, but he also was the head referee for Ed Parker's tournament down in Los Angeles. Well, when I fought in Salt Lake City, in Seattle, my punch had to be really rigid, and my back foot had to be down when you for straight punch, right? And that's not the way I punch. When I punch, I lean forward, I turn my shoulder, and I lift my foot off to gain that at least 12 to 18 inches. Bam! Just inside and connect. So I wouldn't get scored on that, and it kind of pissed me off, because I like that on there, and then and I like back fist, my back fist, right? And they had to say, well, your back fist, they don't count, And even if I did my back fist, it didn't come in with a back fist. Most back fists, when you come inside, it's like this: you draw and you do this. I don't do this. I shoot first and I pull in and lead with my elbow, so my jaw is protected because I'm up close on them. You see what I mean? So they said, well, it's an improper technique. This is when I said, you know what, improper technique. Then I was gonna knock some people out. So I did. So I went, bam, knock them out. They said, man, that's not a good technique. I said, well, the guy down on the floor. You know what I mean? So anyway, we had a lot of things. So our rules in the Kempo section began to start drifting over, and that's why you see that the I don't know if you've seen the international Kajukenbo logo. The international Kajukenbo logo is the one with the reed, right? Okay, I designed that. That was originally for my school, and it represented. I have all the things on why it was developed, and the logo that you see on the front with the reason everything that you see that they still have it in Gelo's method of there you go, that one there, okay. That was the one that's the Kajukenbo. I designed the whole thing. I designed the logo for the back, and I even designed the logo for the front. And that became the international, that became the Kajukenbo Association of America's patch. We use it in the front and we use it in the back. Eventually, the organization split, and we went into the IKA, the International Kajukenbo Association. Only on that's a political it's a political thing that happened, and but nevertheless, there was a growth that had come, because when we came up here first, up into the mainland, it was called the KSDI of Hawaii Incorporated. That was with the one that was here, but because it said KSDI of Hawaii, it never stuck. Because we were all up on the mainland. So this is why we went to the Kajukenbo Association of America. But then what was happening is just that we had schools that were coming up in Canada, we had Mexico, we had Europe, and you couldn't call it Kajukenbo Association of America anymore. You had to call it something else. So it was me and Alejo Reyes, they decided that we was going to break away and call it that way. So it was El Reyes and myself that break away from the KAA and formed this one here. And then actually Tony Ramos joined us. You see what I mean? So it was the three of us. But then you have Halbuna and Charles Gelo, that was predominantly the one that stayed with them. Those guys. Gaylord. When Emperor set me up over there, he told me because we changed the name from Kajukenbo Tompai to Kajukenbo Chuan Fa, he said that I was the youngest one. I was 10 years younger than most of them, you know. And it says, go ahead and show them guys that Chuan Fa, the new Chuan Fa version, you know. If you take a look at Alicia Reyes, and Hal Buno and Charles Gaylord. There wasn't lightweights, you know. And in the style that I was teaching then was already influenced with the northern style of kung fu, which means a lot of high jumping, spinning things and things that way. And this is where we had the problem. We said, well, I cannot teach you what you're teaching. You know, I cannot learn what you're doing because I cannot sweep, I cannot jump up in the air and everything. And you can imagine Elijah Reyes trying to get up into the air and do spinning back kicks. He couldn't do that kind of stuff. You see what I mean? The only one that tried really good was Tony Ramos. And, you know, Tony Ramos, after he taught his class, used to drive down from Fairfield down to where I was teaching in San Leandro, which was about an hour away. And every time he finished his class at about 9:30, then he would come over to my place at 10:30 at night, and he would train with me from 10:30 until maybe 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. You know, he did that two times a week. So he was the only instructor out of the five, you know, that actually made a point to come inside and learn what Emperor wanted me to teach him. Charles Gaylord, you know, he never did, because Charles Gaylord at that time was really big. He had that kind of name, you know. So in other words, for him, it was like, personally, personally, you know, we didn't get along at the very beginning because he couldn't see himself learning from a lot younger guy. You know what I mean? Do that. So what he did was just that he had some of his students come to me, you know, and some of them came to me, and some of them went to San Francisco. You know, I taught them, you know, like Silam 6, 7, 8, and then Tompai and a lot of the other forms. Um, um, and but he wouldn't acknowledge it, so he called it, you know, Kajukenbo Chuan Fa style, yeah, Gaylord method. That's why you had the Gaylord method inside. So, uh, but it doesn't matter. There was out of his group, there was a whole bunch, maybe 3 or 4 of them, top black belts. They came over and studied with me, and then brought back what they could, and then the influence of the kung fu began to get into their style of Chuan Fa. Chuan Fa is the only section that is not pure. Yeah, the sections that was really pure at that particular time. I'm going to explain about the purity anyway. Was the Kempo Karate section, the Tompai section, and the One Hop Kyondo section. Yeah, the Chuan Fa couldn't, because of how the way Charles Gaylord went and have his other students learn. And that became almost like from the other schools in Kempo Karate started to say, oh man, look, they're learning some Kung Fu style. So they go learn, and all this kind of stuff start coming inside. But instead of calling that Chuan Fa section, even if now they had 50% of Kajukenbo, you know, Kempo Karate and then the Chuan Fa movements, you know, it became so kapakai, it became so messy like chop suey, all kinds of things, you know. And that was there, that from that point on now became the influence of why you have a lot of the Kajukenbo schools not pure anymore, you know, not pure anymore. Because you would see every single Kajukenbo school that was Kempo Karate, instead of having the that way, you begin to see them pulling inside other influence. Now you see Aikido come inside. Now you have MMA, you got Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and everything else that's the way. So no Kajukenbo schools look alike, except probably, you know, there's a salutation and that. And then from that point on, it just goes all over the place. You know what I mean? So when I look at the way, you know, and I go to different Kajukenbo schools, and I look, I can see the spine, but you know, different color anymore. It doesn't matter as long as they can go outside and have the attitude. What they add, I think, what is Kajukenbo? It's not the physical art anymore. It's here in the mind on how they think and how they perform themselves. But there's a lot of things that are missing, but they have it in a sense, but not the way that it was originally set up to be. Because within the Tompai section at the beginning, or the Chonfa section and One Hop Kyondo section, there's a method of learning on how you're doing it. And you know, the 5 steps that we use in learning is based on the hand. You see, when they put up their hand, we say that okay, we go for primitive, we go primitive, mechanical, technical, fluidity, and just let it loose. So there's a process of learning that we do. Everybody wants to learn this first 5 steps of learning, but if you learn that first 5 steps of learning as it was traditionally taught at the very beginning, especially in the Assumption School, see the Assumption School, then the progress of learning is much more easier getting into the fluidity stage, number 5, instead of being caught up in a mechanical, technical, and what's that called? Go mechanical. Yeah, we're going to, yeah, no, we can call it the first stage is primitive, which you don't know nothing. Okay, then you have the next stage, which is the mechanical, learning how things work. Technical is how, when, and where, and then the 4th stage is just that being creative, giving you the ability to create, and then the 5th stage is being fluid. Most people like to be in the creative and fluid before even going to the first 3 stages. They don't understand that. You see, so when I talk about creativity, or mechanical, primitive, mechanical, technical, it's the same thing like when you're driving car. You get into the car, you learn where the brakes are, the clutches, and everything. That's all the same. When you look in the car, it's so primitive. You don't even know what the hell you're doing until you get inside it. You get an instructor tell that is the clutch, that is the gear, and all of that. That's the mechanics. You see, now when the mechanics now, but now the technical part comes is that how you put it into gear, where it goes. That's the technical, technical part of it. Then afterwards, you drive around for a couple of years or everything. You don't even think about it because everything now, shit, I'm not going from 1st to 5. I'm just going first to 4th gear. Now you're doing your own gears. That's becoming creative. You see, but later on, you just, you drive in the car, going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the guy that's sitting right next to you said, "How you did that?" He said, "Did what?" He said, "You went from here to here. You're not thinking anymore. It's so fluid that the movement starts." "Well, I just did it. How long have you been doing that?" "Oh, for 4 5 years." You're not even thinking. So that's what you talk about when you get into to the last stage of being creating fluidity. That is the true essence of where martial arts supposed to be. A lot of the martial arts you have today, the instructors keep you down in the primitive, mechanical, and technical because you're going to be there to pay more money for the next couple of years. You see what I mean? And then it's like when you get ready to leave, they come up with something else. "Oh, you didn't learn this yet." Yeah. So they said, how long is that going to take? But you're not thinking about how long that is going to take in your mind. You're thinking, how long, how much money that's going to take, because you're thinking that way. You see me, "Oh shit, okay." And they say, now, okay, here's what the thing is, and you're 3rd-degree black belt, but you need to learn this one over here. You're gonna have to learn this one here to get to your 4th or 5th-degree black belt. And you're thinking years, but in the back of the head, it's not the years. You see the dollar sign go ling 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 ling. You say, okay, I'm gonna figure out that one there. Well, you know what? Maybe if I go to a different school, I don't have to pray that much. You know, Eh, I went to the other school, and you're going to switch. Oh, this is when you start having guys jumping from rank to rank because they got the price down a little bit more, and they're learning the same thing. Sometimes even for free because you're gonna fix the kitchen sink or something. You know what I mean? It's barter. I've seen all this. I mean, she's for the last 40, 50 years, man. I see all kinds of things that happen. I just kind of sit back and everything. Right now, I'm associated with this guy, Sam Ellis. He has that Grandmasters Association in Salt Lake City, and I'm going to be up there I think in April. And we have all the grandmasters over there. As much as they can. And every year they have me as a speaker, and you can tell because you can see some guys just the squibble inside the seat. They start going down because they say, "Oh, here's L again," and they say, "Okay, you guys, how many of you are phony grandmasters?" And they just kind of they're just laughing. Ha, 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 ha. I say, "Well, quick, some of you guys I know because when I was a 5th-degree black belt, you guys were still purple belts." And so I mean, I don't know. Maybe they take it. It's too serious, but really, I don't give a damn because I was there and they weren't. You know, so when I can prove it out where and everything else this way, then they don't say too much. I think the thing that I got through me is that I got the wisdom and the experience. I mean, few months I'm going to be 82 years old. What the hell did I do for the last 60 years? I never sat on my ass. I mean, it was the kind of case where I said, um, I had a lot of challenges along the way, but I mean, it was just part of growing up and just learning. Sometimes it work and everything. We talk about our wins, but not too much times we talk about our losses. Well, why? They say you got a good plan until you get hit in the face and your plans just change. You know what I mean? The dudes and everything. And this guy hit me with a sidekick. I said, where the hell did that come from? You know, so you begin to start learning on things or what works and what don't. So when I go when I go and I visit anybody, I become the same way like how Sid was. Oh, that don't work. What I mean? That don't work. I say, oh, and I learned that from him because he was a fighter, street fighter. You see, so this is how the way that we come up. I think what it was just that now, aside from the physical part, was doing a lot of thinking part. And you know, one thing I know some of the Kajukenbo people may like it or not, but the tradition part that you learn is good. The tradition is always going to be there for a reason. You know, but that's not where Kajukenbo is or was when it was first coming up. Because I know that when I was having problems with a lot of the hard stylists in Kajukenbo, they were doing that to me because they were trying to preserve something that uh, they were so used to learning that they figured they don't maybe have another 3 years to get into learning something else. And since they had their school, there was a profit margin for them, and I saw that. Okay, that's fine, that's cool. You know what I mean? But you got to be able to grow because the martial arts today is totally not like how it was. I mean, I see a lot of good and a lot of bad in it. And the point was just that you know I think that many parts of the Chuan Fa, those that follow what I teach and those that are in one hop to understand that I don't, and that's the reason why I use the logo and I use the logo really well to let them know that what you see is hard is soft, what is soft is hard, and what is fast is slow. You know, so you see the yin yang comes into a lot of play in what I do. So that means when we're practicing, if I ask people right now, I do a seminar, and my seminars I get everybody and I stand up. Yeah, you guys all stand up over here. I said, okay, you guys. All right, let's see what you guys know over here. I said, okay, you guys throw me a punch. Bam, they throw a punch. And I see a lot of them. 98% of them throw a right punch, straight punch, boom. And I don't say anything. I say, okay, now stand up, right? And it says, okay, kick. The kick, boom, the kick. I said, wow, okay. I see the kick coming inside. Okay, I said, all right, take a defensive stand. The first thing you do is you step back. I said, okay, I'm going to tell you to throw it all the way. That's not going to work. They go, why? I said, for one thing, 90% of you over here, 98% of you over here, when I said punch, you just threw a straight punch as karate style. Out on the street, they don't do that shit. They hit you bam with a roundhouse punch coming in an angle and it hits you on the left side, not from a straight. You see, I said, how the hell are you going to do number one? Number one right hand punch counter is that one, right? Okay, you think it away. Oh, the guy's going to throw a straight punch, you get ready for that, and then you do that, then boom, you get hit with a roundhouse punch. It goes, gone. I said, that shit, it don't work. I say, think about it. All of the people right now out on the street, you tell them, hey, you already know. You already know. If you get 90% over 90% of the world, right-handed, you can almost visualize that punch is going to come from this side. So why is your head there and why are you blocking it? You either go inside really tight or stay far away to make it bypass or drop low. I said that, okay, all right. I told you guys to kick. Now, most of you guys, as soon as you guys kick, you either did a right roundhouse punch or right thrust punch, and it never came from the front leg. It came from the back leg. So that means it's too much telegraph. I see. I say, you're not going to touch me. I know what's going to come up. I'm going to go to your weak side, which is going to be the number 9. I call it number 9 because I use a hashtag. When you use a hashtag, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That is your safest place because all the techniques are going to hit you is either the 1 or number 3. That's it. But not number 9. You see, and even if it comes from number 9, that place is weak. Hardly anything comes out of that area. So you go that way. So when I start to explain, I say, now that's what's going to happen. So when I walk around and we're doing our class, I come around side and bam, I hit him from the side and everything. I said, that's what you call ambushing. A lot of the things that's going to happen is going to be ambush. It's not going to be come up around the front. It's perfect if somebody say, I want to fight you. I said, okay, we get ready for it. But how many people are going to come up there? They don't know what you know. You know, they're gonna come there. Hey, Al, bang! Now I've been hit 3 times, you know, with a sucker punch, and I didn't know what it was. This was when I was a teenager, and I said, you know, something's wrong with my Kajukenbo. You see, there's something wrong. And then I get a guy to come inside. All of a sudden, I'm preparing for him because, all right, what he do? He come down, he come to me and go for my legs. You know, judo, you know, jujitsu, right? Now my your technique is all changed. Now, you know what I mean? You got to be ready for the elbows, the knees, and all the kind of stuff, and hurt him. You know. So one guy tell me, "Oh, your techniques are not going to work." I said, "Why?" Because I'm going to grapple you. I said, "Okay." Now this is the thing. I said, "He's going to grapple you. He think I'm playing. I cannot play and tap. Now I got to knock him out." You know what I mean? So when he goes through the back, I come in, I hit him right in the back of the boom, he's out. And he gets up, he said, "What was that?" I said, "Oh, just my hand." You know what I mean? So the point was just that the thing is just that if you're going to be a good martial art, you automatically write down your fear. What's your fear? So when I have my application form, my students go to my application form. They write on a piece of paper. They say, "What is your fear?" "I'm afraid of the dark. You know, I'm afraid of gang kind. I'm afraid of knife. I'm afraid of that and everything." I said, "Okay, we know this. We're going to show you the basics first, and then we're going to work on every single thing over here that you're afraid of, and we're going to make." And that's why all the students are different. All the students are different because we want to work on the fears and make them feel comfortable. You know, I'm afraid of the dark. Okay, good. We're going to train outside, no lights, no nothing. Oh, I'm afraid of fighting on the hill. I say, okay, if summer, when I have my summer camps, you know, because Hawaii have a lot of hills, you know, we're going to side of a hill, regular clothes, and get muddy and everything. And we're fighting and try to kick going up with you. Impossible, totally impossible kicking. So you're using hands, you're grabbing vines, you're trying to punch and every kind of thing. They say, "Oh, that's real." They say, "Okay." They say, "Well, I don't go into the forest and get into a fight like that." I say, "Well, you might get into a fight on the stairway, you know, and the stairways is up and down." You see what I mean? So you take it as real as possible. All I was saying is fight the way you fight, train the way you fight, and fight the way you train. You know, that's old stuff. That's going back. I don't know where I heard that from. It was years and years ago. So we have the same kind of philosophy. You go through all the basics. So you know, you go through, and when you go through what we call the primitive, mechanical, and technical, that's in a stereotype classroom. Everything is nice. You got your bags and everything that way. When you get into the creative and fluidity, that's no more, no more. That's all outside in the parking lot between the talk cars in the bar and all that kind of thing. I say now you're taking it one step. You see what I mean? So that is what we're doing. Some guys do the same thing. They take them to the first 3 stages. You know, they go to the primitive, the mechanical, and technical. They already got their black belt, right? So now you say you want to get into the creative and the fluidity part. Okay, that's going to cost you another cling, 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 couple of more years. You see what I mean? So because they want to get to that stage. They want this stage. How come I cannot go to this stage? I said, well, how are you going to learn how to run if you don't even know how to crawl? You see? So we take you stage by stage and go through all these kind of things. And sometimes they get so technical, you know, because a lot of people when they get into a punch. See, my punch, when I punch, I'm not like this. You can see that my knuckles go back all the way like this. You see what I mean? So when I hit, I don't, you know, I tell them there's 4 different ways of holding a punch. You got it this way, you got that way, you got that way, and you got another way. But mine is so loose that I have this air inside there. So when I punch, this collapses so that the knuckles is going to be here. That's going to get, and I explain to them about that. And naturally you can, you know, that's all the kinetics on it, and just make them learn from why the bone is this, your structure and everything is this. So now it became to make sense, you know. Some people just say, "Oh, just punch this way," and they don't even know how to hold hands at all. But anyway, why are we getting into it? It's almost a class going on.
Like I told you earlier, I have a natural conversation with people, so I like you covered a lot of things. There's a few questions. Well, a few questions.
Sure.
So let's rewind this back. When you were talking about your tournament days, back in the Bay Area, and you were talking about how karate was different. The karate tournaments were different. Were you talking about how was karate different in Hawaii to the mainland back then? And what year was this, more or less?
Now this was in the like some anywhere between 1964 up into 1974 for about 10 years. Hawaii fighters were good, but they wasn't as good as what was happening up on the mainland. You know, the mainland fighters were really good is because you were exchanging. The Kajukenbo people that were here, like Gaylord and Ramos, Albuna, myself, and everything that came there. When we taught our students, the traditional way until we got beat. Yeah. And then we had to learn some things, because I never knew what a spinning back kick up in the air was, what I mean, until I get hit with it, and then I started to do that. I never knew that, you could sweep and do all these kind of things. So it was when Kajukenbo went up there, we had to go through a learning process, and this is why, we talk about our wins, but we don't talk about our losses. The losses was much better than wins because this is where we learned something. Yeah. So we found out what worked and the angles and everything, and learn how to referee. And we didn't like the referee, so we formed our own association and we put in the rules, and then became more stable. And we found that I was one of the few, besides my cousin Carlos Bunda, was from down south. Yeah. He used to enter into tournament competitions too, but he adapted to the Japanese way of fighting. I didn't. You know what I mean? So I stayed more to what I put in my Chinese style. So the thing was just that people would say, "Oh man, I didn't know that Kung Fu fight this way." I said, "Look, I do my forms in Kung Fu, but when I fight Kajukenbo." I said, "What is Kajukenbo?" Then I show them what it is. You see, I said, "Oh, it's kind of interesting what you do." But the thing is just that. I was very privileged, and one of the guys that was really, really good with me was Howard Jackson. I don't know if you remember that guy. The California Flash. He and I was partners because both of us was in lightweight. He was really good. And Joe Lewis. Yeah, Joe Lewis. My association with Joe Lewis was just that Joe Lewis and I used to do seminars together. I would teach him the self-defense I would teach the self-defense and forms, and sometimes tournament fighting. But he would teach basically technical fighting principles, and I began to learn his way of doing the technical fighting principles, which I use and adopt into my fighting styles. So when people learn, I see some people they try to copy what we do in the technical fighting principles. I say, man, they got the idea, but they don't have it. It's just what they have is just maybe a nice plate, but the food is not on it. Only walk around with the plate. You know what I mean? They say, "Oh yeah, I have this nice plate over here." I said, "Okay, good. You understand it now about positioning." But they don't know what positioning is. There's a mental position, physical position, spiritual positioning, position in, position out, left side, right side, up and down. And they don't know that, because all of them had what you call defensive choices, how you do your defensive choice and everything, and straight line versus curved line and so forth. And what is, some people use it as a blitz. They call it blitz. Sometimes they say closing the gap or jamming and everything. They're all the same thing, but it represents difference. Some, like in the South, when I was fighting there, the blitz was called jamming. So different names. You had to get used to all the names what they were using. You see, but so when I began to start adopting the technical fighting principles, Joe Louis put in a lot of it, but it was also put in by we had people that actually was really instrumental. Joe Louis was one, Bruce Lee was one. You had Fred Rand was the other one, and Howard Jackson, and then me. We all have ours. Then we put it in, so you have the another. When you talk about the technical fighting principles, it's not to change your style. It's to enhance the movements. It's how to short circuit and make everything faster, shorter, and more explosive. This is why people that studied with me or with Bill Wallace or Howard Jackson and things this way, that is what made the style of the 1960s to now different, because we understood the technical fighting principles, how to work it, how to work the rings, and how to work the judges told me how to hold your hands and things this way here, and we just drill and drill and drill on that and there, and we work with a lot of blitzing techniques on how you can actually anticipate what the guy was doing just because of the way we're following your shoulder move, hip movements, eye movements, and things this way. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But when it doesn't work, then you change and you begin to adopt into things. And we knew what kind of critical distance line the person had. Some people had really, really short critical distance line. Some people, man, they could go to hyperextension, double hyperextension, extension kicks, and you don't know which one they use because they were good. And not only would they had the good critical distance line, which Bill Wallace had all exceptional speed, exceptional speed. You know, I fought Bill Wallace in 1969 in Salt Lake City. Joe Louis was there, Chuck Norris was there, um, Steve Sanders was there, all the top guys. And what had happened in that particular tournament in 1969 to qualify, it was called a black belt. Was it the world champion something? To qualify in that tournament, you had to be a grand champion from another tournament. And I was grand champion of the Albuquerque. I was called the U.S. national something. Anyway, I won the championship. You know, Bill Wallace won the championship up in the Midwest. Chuck Norris had won it in Los Angeles. Joe Louis had won it somewhere in Dallas. And you had all these grand championships fighting inside this turnier. So it eventually came up where I had beaten my people, you know, from other championships, and Bill Wallace had. So there was actually me and Bill Wallace fighting for the grand championships of all the grand championship. Yeah, and I had to fight Bill Wallace 3 rounds of points accumulated, and he was quick. He was very quick. I mean, he could tag you. I just when I put my hand, bam, oh, my ears. Bing! I started hearing music. You see what I mean? Because he hit me so hard. I said, "Ma, I know what's going to happen." So what I did was I lowered my hand, just dipped my leg to let him take the shot again. As soon as he took the shot, I leaned forward and came right around, catch him in the kidney. That's my point. You see, but it was anticipation. I had to anticipate that to him by just feeding him a little bit. So he took the bait and hit him. You see, so we ended up good. And what had happened was at the end, afterwards, he was 1 point ahead of me. You know, 1 point ahead of me, and then the I hated the announcer. He said, "All right, guys, we're down to the last few seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6." And when you hear that, you don't fight. You run away. You try to keep your distance. So Bill was already 1 point ahead of me, and I was chasing all over the place, and he was smiling and moving around. But he knew at that particular time. You see that if I could have maybe even the score. You see what I mean? Even the score. But when that guy started counting 9, 8, 7, I lost because all you had to do is just skip the distance away until it was timeout. It was good. So he ended up with the grand championship. I ended up the first runner-up, you know, and that was good because that guy, there was a guy by the name of Hell. I don't know, but the grand championship was really unique because this guy made a sword, a really nice sword made of 250 some kind of surgical steel, really, guys, and that must have cost maybe $800 to $1,000. The sword, really beautiful, really handmade. And Joe Louis had one, and I had one, and we stand together with the sword cross over there. From that point on, Bill Wallace and I became really good friends. Yeah, one because he was pissed off at me. And all the judges, matter of fact, was pissed off with me because you see what happened was that I wasn't supposed to be at the tournament. You see, I fought in that tournament. I was sick. I had hepatitis. Yeah. So right. So when you make contact and body sweat, everybody had to go to the hospital and get the gamma globulin shot to get cured. So after they found out, they said, Bill Wallace said, "Shit, you know what happened? I ended up, they gave me this big injection of gamma globulin because you had hepatitis." I said, "Yeah, what the hell? I wasn't going to miss this one. I was going to go." Parker was mad at me. Ralph Castro was mad at me because everybody that had any kind of contact with El Dacascos, you got to go to the hospital just in case. It was fun. I had fun that time, but it was a club. It was the people that it's just that when you become like one of the top 15 or top 20 fighters in the country, the top 10 always stuck together. We always were in a hotel and we party and everything. We exchange ideas and everything, and that's how we got good. We was under the influence of other fighters that use certain techniques we learn and we train and everything else that way. And I was the lightest person that pretty much because I was just around under 140 pounds, that time, and really spunky. Now I'm 165, so it's totally different. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, those are the good old days. So you know what? We kind of drifted away from the original question. Yeah.
Actually, no, you covered it. You covered. I was wondering what happened back then between what was happening in Hawaii and what was happening in the mainland with karate. Um, my other, I'm not going to take too much of your time here. We're almost to wrap
Mm,
up, but I have two more questions here. One of
sure.
them is you mentioned that there were three Gaylord guys that
A what?
learned. You earlier you mentioned there was three Gaylord guys that came into your
Yeah.
school and did absorb a lot of what you were teaching. Do you remember who those
Mm,
guys were or what their names
yeah.
were?
One of them was Richard Manetti. Yeah. Um, Richard Manetti. He had a school. He passed away about a year ago. But Richard Manetti was one of them. Then you had Fred King, from Portland, Oregon, and I forgot the other name. Oh yeah, the other one was Karen Shepherd. You know, Karen Shepherd. Yeah, and she ended up coming up. She was in Eugene studying with Richard Manetti, and then when I was up in Denver, Colorado, all these people over here moved to Denver, Colorado to learn. And Richard Manetti opened up a school for us. So he had one of our schools open up over there, and then when I moved to Germany, they were all in shock. So I wasn't in Denver anymore. So they closed shop and moved away. And during that time that I moved was just at the time of in 1973, 74. That is when we had the OPEC um, oil crisis. So a lot of the schools that I had six schools, no, four schools, and I went from four schools to one school because um, martial arts is a luxury. Yeah. Uh, so when people cannot pay for their lessons, they don't come in anymore. So I went from four schools to one school, and when Germany made me an offer to go there, I said, why not? I just sold my house, pack up, and left. Yeah.
So my last question, um, when and how did you come up with the name of your style, One Hook Kundo? How did that come about? How did that get? Because I know
Mm,
I've heard this story from other people, but I mean I want to hear. I've heard it from other people, and I've asked other people this before, but you're the source. So
yeah.
how did that come about? And historically, how did that end up becoming its own method on its own?
Um, like again, it was political. Yeah. I had moved from California up to Denver, Colorado, and that particular time it was still Chonfa. And when I moved to Denver, Colorado, it was in a way somewhere complicated necessity in a sense because I was going through a divorce at that time, you know, and I was involved with Mary Lou, yeah, and Mary Lou is Malaya, yeah. Before then, so we figured, we got away from all this kind of marital problems, and then when I was in Albuquerque, I had won a championship there in Albuquerque, and at that particular time, this guy by the name of Robert Rapio, he had a school called Kaju, not Kajukenbo, it's just called Kaju, you know, and they wore black uniform, and they went to this particular tournament in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and you know you can see that the Campo people were in black uniform, and mine was like gunmetal gray. So I kind of just stick with them guys, and you see the Taekwondo people and the karate guys in all the white uniform. So we fought in this tournament over there, and that was my very, very, very first tournament. Sam Allred invited me to the tournament because I had won the International Karate Championship for form competition, Chinese style, and he was there. So he wanted me to do a demonstration in Kung Fu. You see what I mean? He was a Kajukenbo guy also, Sam Allred. Yeah. So he invited me there. So I went inside, and my purpose was there to demonstrate, and I demonstrated kung fu forms and everything else that way. But I also fought in the tournament, and I was in lightweight, And in the lightweight division, they had a whole bunch of lightweights from his particular school, you know, and it was mixed up. And I know that one of the guys ended up being a real uh, student of mine afterwards because it was only after the tournament was over with that he told me what was going on. You know, they had all these guys. Most of his students were in the lightweight division, and there were maybe 6 of them, in the lightweight division. So they went into the division, as well as the taekwondo people and karate people. So it was a mix of white uniform, black uniform, and I took the first place in that division. But they all saw me before, and they said, "Oh, they're going to beat me. They're going to kick my ass and everything else that way." Well, I beat every single one of them. Three out of the 6 or 8 of them that fought inside, I beat them, and I beat the other guys. So I ended up having to fight the was that the the lightweight fought the light heavyweight. I had to fight the light heavyweight, and the middleweight fought the heavyweight or something like that. So I ended up and I won the grand championship. And after the grand championship I won, he came up to me and said, "Oh man, I like the way that you fight and everything." His instructor came up to me and says, "Listen, I'd like to invite you to Denver, Colorado, to come and take a look to see if you could come teach to us." So I didn't know who he was. So Malia and I decided, okay, we're gonna go up there. We took our car and we drove up there, and then we kind of liked what we saw, because he said that he was he was going to be away for a couple of years and need somebody to come and manage and run his school. And I said, why not? That's a good opportunity. But going away for a couple of years didn't mean that he was going to be going away to run, because he told me he was going to go to Mexico and be in a hotel industry and things that way. Actually, what it was happening was just that he was going to go away to jail. So he needed somebody to run his school. You see, and I knew nothing about that there. So I figured, well, okay, I go over there to go run his school, which I did. And so that when I was finally in Denver, Colorado, this is a totally different story about it. I found out that he was going to school, going to prison for indecent liberties with minors. You see, indecent liberty with minors. He had already he already had a bad reputation, so he was trying to get somebody that had a good reputation to come inside and save his school, which I came and I did. And at that particular time, I was still in the Chanfa there, but my movements was totally different. I was finding myself looking at stripping down the entire Kajukenbo style, and figure that Emperor's dream at the original was just to bring in the Chanfa style, to develop and use techniques that would be really good, so that we can upgrade Kajukenbo and make them better, because Kajukenbo was still going through learning and process and things this way. In the 60s, 70s, even now, there's a lot of things that was coming inside. That's why it didn't look like that. So he came up. He came up to Denver, Colorado, and he and Del Cruz came up, and I did my forms. I did all the techniques. I did the with it. I did my repetition and everything is this way, And this is where it came into what we call the buzz saw. And buzz saw is a technique that, if you visualize the saw and how it moves, it just keeps on moving, And my technique, when I do it, I never drew my hand back it was bam, elbows keep following, and it was tight. It was really tight. I kept it tight enough so that buzzsaw is always in contact with the wood to cut, not upwards. You see what I mean? So I had the philosophy on it. So while my elbows was working, my knees was also moving, even my head, butts, and shoulders were moving. And I try to use a lot of parts of my body as possible. So Emperor saw that on there. This is when I told him, And besides that, I was learning at that time what Joe Louis and the group I was with fighting, Howard Jackson, all these guys, how we begin to use the fighting principles. I say we have to use this. The fighting principles is understandable. You need to put it into the Kajukenbo style, so people can understand when you tell them, okay, critical distance line, use the outside, that and there. You don't have to show them; they already know what it is. It's almost like a Bible. You see what I mean? So he said, "Oh man, that's good and everything." I said, "See, Joe, I cannot call it Tronfall, because if you take a look, the Tronfall is all fucked up. Excuse my language. It was all messed up anyway, because you had Gaylord doing his method of Tronfall. You had Tony Ramos doing his method of Tronfall. You had everybody was doing it, and I said I didn't want to be that way, because I was different. You said me. So I think, okay, what am I going to do it? And I was training with a guy by the name of Billy Lou. He was really, really good in Kung Fu, And I said, hey, Billy, I'm trying to look for a different name, because what I'm doing is not what I'm doing anymore. So I showed him and everything, and then he told me it's one Kyudo, And I told him, what did that? It means combined fist. I said, it's almost like Kajukenbo. It was a Chinese way of saying Kajukenbo. But it was now because I said one hop kendo. It's actually like Kajukenbo combined mixed art. But this one was now, when you knew it, it referred to El Dacascos and the Chinese version of what he was doing. My expression. Now, that was my expression. Yeah, the word's really important. So my expression of teaching one hop kendo. So when people learn my expression of one hop kendo, it became my method of teaching them. So you understand? It became like your system, style, method, expression. That expression is you. But when I teach it now, it becomes your method, my method of teaching you, but it is your expression. So it's kind of confusing when people understand it and they say, you know what martial arts is supposed to be? You're an artist. And what is an artist? An artist is an expressionist. He expresses things. You see? So it's like when I'm mad at you, my tonality is different. Like I say, if I say I hate you, it doesn't really mean only three things. But if I say I hate you, it means I hate you. If I say I hate you, that's another thing. If I say I hate you, now it becomes very personal. You see, so you take in the words out of that today, you become an expression. So when I hit on that expression, I might go bam, bam, and I follow that. That is my main cue. That's the middle one. You see what I mean? So I'm expressing my ways, like I always say that when people ask me, what is one hop kendo? One hop kendo. I said it's jazz. It's jazz. That's exactly what it is. I don't know what you're doing. You're coming inside. You're playing with me. I'm feeling in the spots and making the rhythm. But we're still into rhythm. If I hear you go and put a little bit more, I put a little bit more. And I said, there's an expression. Oh, it makes sense. Because when you fight, you know, fight. Even if it's physical, it's not there. It's more in the spirit and the mind. You see what I mean? And then when you go into the spirit and mind, then you begin to express yourself. Then like, I love you. I love you. Or how you put it in is all that way. So, and I tell people when I'm doing my seminar, you see, I hold on a second. My iWatch just said, "Did you fall?" So I gotta say, no, I didn't fall. I just went to hard movement, so I'm okay. All right. See. So okay, so when I say that, when I'm go to a seminar, they go all through the same movements over there. Then I was separate them. Like, okay, be yourself. I want you to express yourself. Do this. Oh, all of a sudden their movements is like different. I said, remember that you're a pussycat, but become a tiger. The minute that punch fly, you become a tiger. What does the tiger do? Okay, you know that the tiger has the tiger is much more stronger than the lion or the leopard. It's one of those animals over there that is bigger and stronger, and everything comes out. You have to turn from a pussycat to a lion, a tiger, and that's what you go. Yeah, just go inside. And the best way to practice that is that you go in the mirror. If you smile and make the kind of expert. Damn it! I got to take this watch off. It's always saying that I'm falling. I did not fall. Okay. Okay. All right. So anyway, I don't know. I get excited when I do this kind of stuff. But there you go. You see, the thing is, I'm expressing myself, and then I do that, and I expect my students, when they go, I say, remember, every signature is different, and you have your own signature. You're not going to look like your instructor. You're going to look like you. You see, and how do you look like? And if it looks sloppy, but it knocks the person out, then you got the writing of a doctor who's sloppy, but you know what he's doing. You see, so it's all the kind of way.
Well, Sifu, thank you so much for sharing just everything from the history to how you put that together. Like I said, I could literally spend a week. It would take me more than a week. It'd probably take me months to try to get everything. But I do appreciate you taking the last hour or so to kind of break that down. Before I go, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of Kajukenbo guys, girls, boys and girls, and men and women, ladies and gentlemen, they love listening. I don't know if I don't want to make a generalized statement. A lot of them listen to my show. Is there a message you'd like to put out there to the Kajukenbo community before we wrap up?
Yeah, martial arts to me is like medical insurance, something that you need to have but hope you never have to use. Yeah, and that's how you have to look at it. Because you hope you never have to use them, but the minute you use them, then you got to be able to. That's a choice. That they have a legal implications. You got legal, moral, and ethical implications that come along with it. So, best thing to do when you learn martial arts, you better learn what the law is in your area. I have fun with this. That's entirely class. That's another class and subject that when I go into, I start teaching. I just start teaching this in here because we get into active shooting. We get into all kinds of things. Try to make it as real as possible. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Sifu, thanks again. And to my listeners, thank you for checking out Social Jello with Angelo podcast. I try to release at least one of these a month. And I usually don't say this. Merry Christmas. This is a Christmas episode.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna
Hold on. Give me just half a second, okay?
all right.
Half a second. Okay, great, guys. Before you go, I just want you guys to let you know, if you're going to be doing this for Christmas, hey, go out to Amazon and pick up my book. All right, I got a lot of things I can talk to you about, but you read this in here, and then you guys can always come back and ask Angelo or myself, all kinds of questions. On my thing has always been the same thing, and the reason why I formed the International Kajukenbo Association is just that there's a lot of things that are going out there that need to be corrected. And my thing has always been, what was the original concept of what the first founders wanted? And now, I want to make sure that I can fulfill the wish into making Kajukenbo where it rightfully belongs, being a very superior art. And it cannot be superior if you have too much infighting. You got to be able to listen up. And there's not too many guys around. I mean, I'm going to be 82, and you figure this way, all the first founders are all gone. But guys like Dela Cruz or Henry Mendak and myself, we were there. We saw it. We knew what they wanted. We are like within the first generation. Now you have a lot of people talk about Kajukenbo, the history and all the kind of things. They get it from other people, other people. And it's like some of the things I hear that people talking about, hey, that's 5 generations down. It's not what happened. It's not what happened. It's different. So if they can talk to Dela Cruz or myself or some people that know it, like Mitch Powell, he knows a lot of things also, you see. But and also like Glenn, they know a lot of things, but they weren't there. They were not there. You see what I mean? So this is why we say, okay, we know, we hear them talking. If they, okay, that part is okay, you got 90% right, but 10% is wrong. And then when it comes out, a lot of people take the 10% and forget the 90%. And then it gets really messed up, So that's all I can say. I don't know it all, but I know what I saw, I know what I felt, and I was there. Yeah.
And that's why, again, I really appreciate you coming out and sharing that, because I think that's one great way to clear a lot of things up.
Okay.
I'm not getting a story from someone who said that they knew someone. I always joke around with Mitch Powell that I've heard when people talked about Joe Imperato and his history and some of the things that happened. I heard like 5 different stories about what happened, and I was so unclear for the longest. And I sat down with another Kajukenbo guy. Hey, you heard about because I always tell check cover, right? I always tell my students, check cover before you get started. Check cover. Why do we check cover? To look behind us. No. What's the history behind check cover? Oh, the history behind check cover. And like one of my upper block posts come in. The history is because what happened with Temperado, we always check cover because we want to make sure that we check our 6, right? Because of what happened. But then the story was like, well, what happened? Like outside of class, talking to another Kajukenbo guy. He's like, he was at a party. I heard he was at a party. He was in a parking lot. He was in a bar. There was like 3 or 4 different stories, right? So it wasn't until I started actually talking to people that were closer to the event that actually figure out what it is. So someone like you coming out, sharing what you saw, helps really clear up a lot of stuff that people talk about. And that's why, again, a huge, I told you I have a Spanish background, a big gracias and a big mahalo for you doing that.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate that.
All right. Thank you.
All right, y'all.
All
Again, have a Merry Christmas and one of these a month. Subscribe and share with your friends. And I'll catch y'all next time.
All righty. You take care of yourself. God bless. Aloha.